Rio wakes up and finds himself chilling in a realm of clouds, with an angel casually standing in front of him. First things first, the angel breaks the news. Yep, Rio just died. And no surprise here, it was another hidden run by the infamous truck cunt. But instead of heading to the afterlife, Michael, yep, the angel has a name, tells Rio he's getting a one-way ticket to another world. Now, unlike those other overachievers, Rio doesn't have to save the world, defeat a demon lord, or collect 7 magical socks. Nope, Michael says Rio has no mission. He's free to do whatever he wants. So, naturally, Rio requests a slow and relaxing life. Michael, being the bro he is, sets him up nicely with a basic rundown of this magical new world called Phi, where about 20% of the population can use elemental magic. Lucky for Rio, his most compatible element is water. To keep things cozy, Michael preps a starter pack that includes a small ice house, a 2-month food supply, and a protective barrier to keep monsters out. There's even a monster guidebook because you never know when something with teeth and claws will show up uninvited. With everything in place, Rio goes outside and tries his new powers. He shouts water ball, and boom, a ball of water pops up in his hand. Turns out, casting magic is easier than expected. In fact, he can even skip the chanting and just think it into existence. Naturally, he heads to the bathhouse, only to realize he can only make warm water. No hot bath equals no peace. So, he decides to make a fire. Problem is, he has zero clue how to do that. After some sun gazing and a light bulb moment, he makes a magnifying glass out of ice, don't ask how, just wizard things, uses sunlight to spark a fire, and finally heats his ice bath. Not bad for day 1 in magical survival mode. The next morning, over breakfast, Rio reflects. Michael gave him food for 2 months, but he'll have to hunt eventually. A butter knife isn't going to cut it, literally, so it's time to train. He tries blasting a water ball at a tree. It hits like a wet sponge, not very lethal. So, he experiments, compresses the water for a high-pressure jet. Great in theory, but in practice, it's more super soaker than deadly beam. He recalls Michael's advice, magic is all about imagination. So, he keeps practicing day after day. Eventually, his water jets get better, and he even learns to make hot water for proper baths. Though, controlling the temperature is still a work in progress. Next up, ice magic. This time, he tries forming ice straight from the air. It works? Eventually. Took around 3 to 4 business days, but who's counting? Sadly, unlike water, ice isn't as easy to throw around. Combat training isn't going great, and after hours of trial and error, Rio faceplants from mana exhaustion. He calls it a day. But when morning hits and his mana bar refills, Rio is back at it, because if he wants a chill life in a magical world, he's got to learn to chill and survive. This becomes Rio's daily grind for the next few weeks. Thanks to all the training, he can now summon ice instantly. Yep, no more waiting 3 to 4 business days. It's finally a viable attack. With his magical toolkit ready and his food stash running low, Rio heads out into the forest for his first real hunt. Right away, he spots a pair of animal footprints and follows them to a nearby river. While he's there, he finds some handy flint and realizes he can start fires by striking it against his sword. Primitive but effective. He also takes a moment to gather some detox herbs, because you never know when forest sushi might backfire. But then, growl. A low, rumbling sound behind him. Rio turns and freezes as a lesser boar locks eyes with him like it's ready for a one-on-one wrestling match. The boar charges, and since this is the first time Rio has ever been in a real fight, he mentally blue screens. Just before impact, he snaps out of it and jumps aside. Close call. Now that he's got his head in the game, he uses his magic. He whips up an ice track to make the boar slip, Mario Kart style, then follows it up with a series of ice spikes. Boom, instant, pointy death. After turning the boar into future bacon, Rio flips through his monster guide and learns that the lesser boar is literally the weakest thing in the forest. Not exactly encouraging. The guidebook is designed for rookies like him, but there are 2 ominous bonus pages at the end. One is about dragons, which, according to the book, can solo entire cities. The official advice: run. Unofficial advice: run faster. Not that it'll help. The second page mentions demons, but it's hilariously vague. Basically just says, if you meet one, you're doomed. Great. Super helpful. The next day, Rio heads out to hunt again, but surprise! He gets ambushed from above by a giant assassin hawk. This bird isn't just big, it's packing wind magic and slashes through prey like it's got built-in razors. Ryo runs while conjuring ice shields on the fly. He doesn't want to fight this thing, but he's definitely not outrunning it either. So, he counters with water jets. The hawk dodges and swoops down with a slicing wind attack, but Ryo blocks it just in time with an ice shield. The blow smashes across the hawk's eye, sending it crashing to the ground. The hawk eventually gets up, now rocking an eye patch-worthy injury, and flies away. But not before locking eyes, with Ryo, making it personal. That bird's got beef now. Ryo, still alive and mildly traumatized, is starting to rethink what slow, peaceful life really means. While running from the hawk, he also manages to get completely lost in the forest until late at night. While wandering, he stumbles across a glowing lake, and in the middle of it, a dullahan just casually standing there. And it's already spotted him. As time passes, Ryo continues training like a man on a magical gym grind. He can now hunt and preserve food with ease, and his magic is looking seriously dangerous. He can summon massive sheets of ice and slam them down instantly, and his water jets are powerful enough to slice through solid rock. Not bad for a guy who couldn't heat bathwater a month ago. But combat training doesn't stop with ice. Ever since the dullahan encounter, Ryo has gone into the forest every night to fight it. It wasn't listed in the monster guide, so either it's not a monster or it's just too high level for beginners. Either way, Ryo isn't backing down. Armed with his trusty ice stick, he charges forward, swinging like a magical baseball champ against the headless nightmare. This whole thing with the dullahan is less of a deathmatch and more of an intense training montage. The headless horseman totally outclasses Ryo in both strength and skill, but that doesn't stop him from doing his best, blocking attacks with his trusty ice shields, only to get flattened in seconds anyway. Strangely, the dullahan never speaks a word, but Ryo can't shake the feeling that this creepy, silent warrior has taken it upon himself to play battle sensei. Then one day, the dullahan raises its sword and uses water magic to extend the blade, surprising Ryo, who had no idea it could use the same element. After showing off the magical blade, the dullahan casually hands it over to Ryo, then walks out onto the lake like some mysterious boss character on his break. Some time later, Ryo is out hunting again when, bam, he's suddenly ambushed by that same assassin hawk. Only this time, it's black. Ryo figures the hawk must have hit the gym and evolved, all to settle the score. Heady, maybe. Terrifying, definitely. The hawk dives in, launching wind slashes. Ryo panics and throws up 5 ice walls. But evolve hawk means stronger wind slashes, and those walls get shredded like wet tissue paper. Cue full-on panic mode. Ryo zigzags across the field, throwing up walls like a panicked Fortnite builder, dodging incoming attacks. He finally sees an opening and launches a volley of ice spikes, but the hawk speeds up and dodges like it's in an anime tournament arc. Then it screeches. Not just a regular screech, a magical, high-frequency, ice-melting screech that disrupts Ryo's magic, leaving him defenseless. Great. The hawk hovers in front of him, clearly charging up something massive. Ryo senses electricity in the air, then zap, a bolt of lightning fires at him. Luckily, he channels his inner survival instinct, uses a stick as a lightning rod, not OSHA-approved, and jumps clear just in time. Half-fried and still twitching, Ryo prepares for round 2 as the hawk dives in for the kill. At the last second, Ryo whips out his ice sword and parries the talons. After a few intense clashes, Ryo spots a gap in the hawk's guard, thanks to his grueling sparring sessions with the dullahan, and lands a clean stab through its neck. The hawk crashes to the ground. Ryo approaches it, understanding its desperation. It lost an eye to him and pushed itself to evolve, all to prove it was stronger. But Ryo trained too, and in the end, he won. As he walks home, Ryo is shocked, literally stunned, when a dragon appears out of nowhere. Remembering the monster guide books, warning, run, and pray, he freezes. But instead of roasting him alive, the dragon talks to him via telepathy. It's not hostile, it's actually searching for a black hawk that flew this way. Uh-oh. Ryo nervously explains that, yeah, he may have accidentally killed the hawk in self-defense. The dragon is surprised a human could do that, but doesn't seem angry. Instead, it notices the sword Ryo is carrying and recognizes it as the Fairy King's blade. For Ryo to have received it, he must have done something to earn the king's favor. The dragon, intrigued, decides to chat. Ryo, still pretty clueless about this world, jumps at the chance to ask questions. They talk for hours, sharing stories like old pals until evening comes. comes, and the dragon says it's time to head home. Rio thanks him for the chat, and the dragon thanks Rio too, saying it's been ages since he's had such a fun conversation. As they part ways, a scene cuts to Michael, back in heaven, casually going over Rio's reincarnation paperwork, and then he notices something odd. Turns out, Rio was granted a hidden trait, eternal youth. Weird, because Michael hasn't seen a hidden trait since that hero girl he sent to Faye 10,000 years ago. One day, Rio heads to the beach because he's been craving salt lately. But instead of seasoning, he finds a wrecked ship washed ashore. He checks for survivors and finds a body, but the guy's already dead. Just then, he hears grunting from the other side of the beach and, to his relief, discovers someone actually survived. Turns out, the ship was destroyed by a giant sea monster during a massive storm. The survivor, Abel, was sure he'd die, but instead wakes up in a warm bed with all his stuff neatly placed nearby. He heads outside to get his bearings but is met by Rio, who casually says he's glad Abel is up and about. Abel is surprised. He didn't even sense Rio approaching and thinks his fashion sense is weird. But instead of being rude, he thanks Rio for saving him. Rio admits all he did was drag Abel's body back, and sadly, he was the only survivor. But Abel isn't too broken up. Everyone else was an illegal smuggler anyway. Rio, still new to the concept of smugglers, offers to make lunch since Abel must be starving. Over lunch, Abel asks why Rio is only wearing a loincloth. Rio shrugs, he's broke, plus there are no towns nearby to even buy clothes. Abel's impressed by how well Rio is surviving alone. When he asks if Rio hunts with that tiny knife on the table, Rio casually shows off his water magic instead, filling a jug to demonstrate. Abel is amazed. On the Central Plains, only about half the people can use magic, which shocks Rio. Michael told him only 20% could. Someone's been giving outdated stats. After lunch, Abel asks Rio to take him back to the wreck since he needs to check something. On the way, he wonders why Rio doesn't use a magic staff, but quickly figures it's a money problem. To make up for his insensitivity, he insists on handling any monsters they encounter. Rio says that won't be necessary, but Abel wants to feel useful. When they reach the wreckage, all the bodies are gone, probably eaten by monsters. Abel's lucky Rio found him when he did. After searching, Abel can't find what he was looking for and decides to regroup with his friends, though he has no idea how far he is from the town of Lon. He fears it'll be a long, lonely journey, but then invites Rio to come along. Rio, curious about the world and with no real reason to stay, agrees, though he needs to handle some things first. They plan to leave the next morning. That night, Abel notices Rio heading into the forest, claiming he needs to meet someone. Suspicious but polite, Abel doesn't pry. Rio meets with the Dullahan, telling him he'll be leaving the forest soon, so this might be their last spar for a while. They fight hard. Rio has improved enough to push Dullahan back slightly, but the skill gap is still massive. Eventually, Rio collapses in defeat. As Dullahan walks back to the lake, Rio thanks him for all the training. Seeing Rio as a precious student, Dullahan gifts him a special robe, Rio's first proper clothing upgrade. The next morning, Rio and Abel set off on their journey. Rio takes one last look at his home before stepping into the wider world. But of course, no journey starts easy. Soon after, they encounter a boar monster. Abel asks Rio to stand back while he handles the boar. He draws his sword, shouts total impalement, and instantly blows a clean hole through the boar. Rio, stunned, asks what that was, and Abel explains that people who can't use magic rely on combat skills, techniques that let them pull off flashy moves like that. After a day's trek, they reach a marsh crawling with lizardmen. Not keen on a fight, Abel suggests sneaking around, but Rio senses they're being followed. When the lizardmen emerge, Abel prepares to fight, but Rio tells him there are too many, and then casually obliterates them with a barrage of icicles. Abel is speechless, but saves his questions until the fight's over. Afterwards, Abel asks what spell Rio just used. Rio shrugs, just regular icicles. But Abel insists mages can only cast one spell at a time, at least that's what some wind mage told him. Rio figures this must be a wind magic limitation since he's always been able to multitask with water. Later, Rio even conjures water for Abel, using a totally different incantation, because honestly, he just says whatever sounds cool. Eventually, they wander into a rock golem field, getting pelted with boulders. Abel uses his total impalement again, but the golems just heal instantly. Rio decides it's time for a new strategy. He asks Abel to back off, then summons a massive ice cube and crushes the golems with it, one by one. Only one golem is left, but it's not moving. They figure the golems drain energy from the ground, so when they fall, they're done. Inside the last golem, they find a massive magic stone, though it's a shame the others got smashed to bits. That night, while camping, Abel mentions that golems can also be found in dungeons. Rio's eyes light up. Dungeons. He's pumped, but Abel didn't mention them before because he didn't think Rio would care. Lucky for Rio, the only dungeon in the Central Plains is in Lon, their destination. Rio also asks about dwarves and elves. Abel explains, dwarves are short, strong, great craftsmen, and plenty live in Lon. Elves? They're more reclusive, living deep in forests, and Abel only knows one elf in Lon. The next morning, they continue north. Rio confidently says that past the mountains lies human civilization. Abel's curious how Rio knows this, having never visited a village. Truth is, a dragon told Rio, but he keeps that to himself. Abel would probably freak out. Suddenly, Rio senses danger. A giant griffin appears. Neither of them can win this fight, so Rio quickly tosses his stored meat to distract it. Abel follows suit, and thankfully, the griffin takes the offering and leaves. Abel remarks that monsters like griffins haven't been seen near humans for centuries. That means these mountains are keeping the worst creatures away, but also means they'll face even more beasts. And he's right. Next up, a pack of wyverns. Abel suggests sneaking past, but Rio is confident this time. He charges in, firing off ice spears and taking the wyverns down with ease, something that usually takes 20 adventurers. Abel is floored, but hey, he's not complaining. They keep fighting their way through and eventually make it to the other side of the mountains, one step closer to reaching civilization. Rio and Abel continue their journey, debating whether they should ever willingly face wyverns again. Rio's cool with it. More monsters, more fun, but Abel would prefer not to die. Thank you very much. That said, he's glad Rio took the wyverns down last time. They now have a hefty bag of magic stones worth a fortune. Eventually, they spot a thin road up north. Roads mean towns, so that's a win. Abel notices the path stretches toward what looks like Mount Everest to the east, so he suggests heading west instead. He recognizes the icy peaks, but stays quiet and just tells Rio that if they go east, they'll reach the town of Coyote. Hearing that, Rio is thrilled. He's been dreaming of sleeping in an actual bed. Abel, a little surprised, jokes that he thought Rio was more of a caveman who lives for monster fights. They discuss the local food in Coyote, which Abel praises highly, and before long, they arrive in town and hit up a restaurant. Over lunch, Abel tells Rio about adventure guilds, suggesting he registers since he's strong, and the guild card also works as an ID and grants access across the nation. Rio likes the idea, especially since Abel had to pay the gate fee for him earlier. Plus, guild members can trade magic stones and monster loot, though being an alchemist helps. Rio, a chemistry nerd, is now tempted to pursue alchemy. When the waitress serves curry and rice, Rio's jaw drops. This world has curry too. He chuckles to himself, thinking how other isekai protagonists have to invent earth foods from scratch. Yet here's curry ready to order. Naturally, he goes full mukbang mode, asking for seconds, then thirds. The next morning, he's still raving about the curry, making Abel wonder if Rio has ever eaten a decent meal before. Rio jokes that Abel must be keeping more secrets, an offhand comment that flusters Abel, hinting he might actually be hiding something. They continue through meadows and soon spot Lon, their true destination. At the gates, the guard recognizes Abel and is shocked. Word was that he'd gone missing. Abel just says Rio saved his life. The guard, grateful, shakes Rio's hand like they're lifelong pals. Since Rio isn't registered yet, Abel again pays the entry fee. As they walk, Rio realizes Abel is pretty famous and friendly with everyone. At the Adventurers Guild, Abel explains that new registrants start at rank F, but since he's vouching, Rio might jump to rank E or even D. Also, dumping all their magic stones at once might tank the market, so Abel wants the guildmaster's advice. Inside, everyone cheers to see Abel alive. Feeling like the awkward +1 at a reunion, Rio slips outside for a stroll, where he bumps into an elf girl. She notes his robe looks like the fairy king's attire, but leaves in a hurry before explaining more, promising to meet again. Abel eventually drags Rio back in, hyping him up as his lifesaver. Everyone thanks Rio, then returns to their drinks. At the counter, Abel pushes for Rio's registration, recommending a D rank. The receptionist is shocked. This is the Crimson Sword Party's first time endorsing anyone. Still, Rio needs to pass a physical test. Meanwhile, Abel requests a meeting with the guildmaster, who bursts in. Hugh, shocked they survive the mountain. Abel argues that anyone making it back alive deserves a higher rank. Hugh agrees to promote Rio, but before they finish, a team barges in. It's Abel's party members, Lynn, Warren, and Rhea. When Lynn sees Abel alive, she falls to her knees, unable to believe she's seeing him again. Abel walks over and apologizes for worrying them, admitting he would have died if Rio hadn't saved him. So, he tells them Rio deserves their gratitude. Hugh, sensing the party has catching up to do, excuses himself and tells the guild clerk, Nina, to prepare the materials for Rio's registration. As Rio tries to leave with Hugh, Abel calls out, asking him to wait by the guild afterward. They've got things to do. Outside, Hugh notices Rio's curiosity about Abel's popularity and explains that Abel's party, Crimson Sword, is the strongest in the city, and his absence threw the whole place into chaos. Rio asks if his registration will be done in dank, and Hugh confirms, noting that while Abel is strong, he clearly needed a capable partner like Rio, so there's no hesitation in registering him. In the office, Nina arrives with the forms. She asks Rio about his skills and whether he's ever been to a dungeon. He hasn't, so she recommends their monthly dungeon class, which Rio signs up for. He's surprised they have clocks here, but Nina explains there's a big one in the city center. She also offers lodging at the guild for 300 days post-registration. After the paperwork, she hands Rio his guild card, prints his details via a magic device, and registration is complete. Outside, Hugh is relieved Abel is back, lamenting how the city was a mess without him. Rio rejoins Abel, who takes him around town to sell their magic stones, planning to buy clothes and a staff for Rio. Rio appreciates it but is puzzled. He's fine without a staff since he's always carried a sword. Abel laughs, saying his sword is more like a glorified knife. During their errands, Rio peppers Abel with questions and learns this world has 24-hour days, 7-day weeks, and 30-day months, just like Earth. Combined with the curry he ate, he wonders if someone from Earth reincarnated here and changed the world. Later, Abel drags Rio to his welcome party, where they drink and celebrate all night. The next morning, Rio is exhausted. As he walks to the lodge with Na, she teases him about drinking too much and mentions how raw Abel's brother barely left his side in gratitude. At the lodge, Nina introduces Rio to his new roommates, Niels and Addo, who agree to keep things casual between them. Na then brings in a fourth roommate, Ian, a 16-year-old girl whose parents recently died, so she turned to adventuring. Na reminds Rio to attend class with Ian the next day. Meanwhile, Abel tells his party about Rio's insane feats, casting magic without a staff, killing wyverns with ice, and summoning giant ice blocks. Lynn doubts it, citing the known limits of magic, but Abel insists it's true. Rhea remarks that only the Inferno magician was said to be that powerful, though it's thought to be a myth. They also wonder if Rio could be a threat or ally to the Duhi Empire, but Abel assures them Rio despises that name. Meanwhile, Rio laughs and bonds with his new roommates, reflecting on how drastically his life has changed.